Welcome back, party members and NPCs. Squall the FF8 here with a special review. I'm going to be telling you guys about a movie that I went and saw that I'm super excited about. I went and saw Shin Godzilla, or in the West it's called Godzilla Resurgence. And this is a Toho company production. And Toho, for those of you who don't know, is the company that originally made Godzilla, or as some of you may know it, Gojira, back in 1954. I love Godzilla. I love the Godzilla movies. Of course, there are fans who are bigger fans than I am. I'm willing to admit that, but I do love a good Godzilla movie. I love going out and seeing them. I love watching them on DVD. The first one that I did watch, I was somewhere around 6 or 7 years old, and the first one I watched was the 1954 Gojira movie, watched on VHS. And the one that I saw after that was Monster Zero, or some of you may know King Ghidorah, or Ghidorah. I love the Godzilla movies, and it wasn't until I got older that I started understanding the social commentary around them, which just made me appreciate the Godzilla movies even more. So I want to tell you a little bit about Shin Godzilla, some of my review, why I liked it, and some of the commentary that goes with it. So I'll start with some of the notable crew of the additional reasons of why I was super excited about that. So first off, we've got Hideki Anno. He's the director, writer, and editor of Shin Godzilla. And the reason why he is so interesting to me is because he was the director and the screenwriter for the acclaimed anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion. He was also the director and the screenwriter for its subsequent movies, The Death and Rebirth, as well as the end of Evangelion, and including the rebuild of Evangelion that still isn't quite finished. It's a 4-part movie series, and we've got 3 of the 4 movies finished at the moment. He also did storyboards for another anime series that I love an awful lot, and that's Magical Shopping Arcade Abenobashi. And he was also an animator for Studio Ghibli's production Nausicaa, The Valley of the Winds. He also was the animator for Neon Genesis Evangelion and another anime series that I love but do not own, Macross Plus, and Macross Plus the movie edition. And he, believe it or not, he even did some acting and some stuff. He was an actor for one of the movies, Otaku no Video, which is a classic if you haven't seen it. It's kind of hard to get your hands on, but I do recommend seeing it. He was also an actor in Fulikuli, or FLCL, for those of you who don't know. And he was an actor in Magical Shopping Arcade Abenobashi. And he was an actor in another one of Studio Ghibli's films, The Wind Rises. So yeah, I really like this guy. He's done a lot of stuff that I really like. The next guy that's worked on Shin Godzilla, he's the co-director as well as the visual effects director for this movie, and he's also done some really cool things as well. He directed the 2-part Attack on Titan live-action movie that came out last year in Japan. He also helped write Neon Genesis Evangelion, as well as the movies and as well as the rebuild series, and he helped storyboard it. He's heavily involved in the Evangelion stuff even to this day, which is really neat. Again, that's something I really like. I like these guys. I like what they do, and I think that they have really smart ideas. He's also been the special effects director for the mid-90s Gamera series. He was also the special effects director for a Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah movie, also known as Giant Monsters at All Out Attack. And he was the assistant special effects director for the 1984 Return of Godzilla. So again, he's done a lot of really cool stuff, and some that I really like. So the last guy I want to talk to you about is the guy who did the music, Shiro Shagisu. And he's done a lot of really noticeable things, such as Ranma 1/2, Macross 2, again the Neon Genesis series and its movies, Magical Shopping Arcade Abenobashi, Cass Hearn, Bleach, Berserk, The Golden Age arc, Magi, The Labyrinth of Magic, Magi, The Kingdom of Magic, the Attack on Titan 2-part movie, live action movie, and of course, this movie Shin Godzilla. So why mention this? Why are these connections important? The reason why they're important is because without these guys, Shin Godzilla wouldn't have been the same, and that would have been a real shame. You see, Shinji Higuchi was already working on the film. He already agreed to. And so Toho approached Anno about doing the film, and Anno, he said no. And the reason why he had said no is that he had just finished Evangelion 3.0, and he fell into a bout of depression. You see, Anno suffers from clinical depression, which is part of the reason why some of the stuff that he does is so good, because he takes that depression and the things that he's trying to work through and that he suffers from, and he puts that into his art form. And that just, it really changes things, and it really makes it interesting, which is why Evangelion was so interesting, because each one of those characters in that movie or series was a portion of himself made manifest. So due to this depression, he didn't feel like he could be part of the Godzilla movie, just because he was suffering too much at the time, and even though Toho really, really wanted him to do it, he said no. And this was January of 2013 when this happened. But thankfully, he was good friends with Shinji, and Shinji, he pressed him, and he's like, look, you really want to be a part of this. This is going to be really good. You've got to be a part of this. And he kind of badgered him for like 3 months until Anno finally gave in and was like, all right, I'll be a part of this. Even though he was kind of worried that his depression might not have, with the way he was, that it wasn't going to, be good for the movie. He didn't have any ideas for what he was going to do. He's like, I don't know if I can continue this Godzilla storyline. And that's when he decided, look, if I'm going to do Godzilla, I want to do it fresh. I want to do what they did in 1954 and pull from a story, a real-life event, and make Godzilla that. So it's honestly a true reboot. Hence the name Shin. Shin means new or true. So yeah, that and alone, makes the artistic decision to make this movie really, really, really interesting. And having the guy who did the music for Neon Genesis behind him, they kind of had their core crew behind him, and that was really nice because he's a really, really good music director. Being able to put elements, he put thematic elements from the music from Evangelion, such as the Decisive battle music, which you can hear throughout the series. In Evangelion, he kind of remixed it a little bit, and it worked really, really well. It was very enjoyable to listen to. I remember sitting in the theater and listening to it and go, I recognize that, totally Evangelion music. It is unmistakably Evangelion music. And it was mixed in with sort of remixed original versions of the 1954 score of Godzilla as well. So that made it really interesting. So with this remake going on, with the guys behind Evangelion working on it, I got a real good sense of social commentary, which is something I feel like Anno is really, really good at putting in his films. And I think having him work on it is what also made me feel such a sense of dread throughout this movie, and a sense of hopelessness that I haven't experienced in the other Godzilla movies. And in all honesty, this Godzilla in particular is one of the most terrifying Godzillas that I have ever seen on film. I think the reasoning for that is because of its influence, where he drew from. The 1954 Godzilla, as some of you may or may not know, came out of the bombs that the United States dropped on Japan. They dropped them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's why that movie has such a strong impact. That's its social commentary behind the whole film. And this one draws from something similar and yet different. It draws from the 2011 Tohoku Earthquake and Tsunami that happened in 2011 and the subsequent Fukushima nuclear reactor meltdown. So I want to spend some time talking to you about those disasters and why these triple threat disasters were not just so devastating, but why they could make for such a good movie and why it's important to know that. So for those of you who may or may not know, the Tohoku Earthquake had a magnitude of 9.0, which makes it one of the most devastating earthquakes on record. I think it puts it in the category of the fourth most devastating earthquake that's ever been recorded in our history, which is, that's pretty damaging. It occurred March 11th, 2011, and this earthquake caused a tsunami. If you guys want to see some of the video, I'll link below some of the video that people have recorded from the earthquake and such, so you can see the earthquake happening in the multiple prefectures that it affected. The earthquake, it was even felt more than 300 miles away. You can also see some of the destruction that the tsunami has wrecked as well. You can see cars being picked up by the waves and moved and crashed against. And there's quite a large death toll from all this. A lot of people died in the earthquake and a lot of people drowned because of the tsunami. Like I said, it was a really catastrophic event. They estimated that there's about 19,000 people killed from this event, and about 6,152 people injured, and just like 2,562 people just disappeared. The waves caught them and such, and they just disappeared, and they haven't been able to find them. I'll put some links in the description as well that you can read some of this stuff, some of the news articles. And again, I highly recommend at least watching some of the video that I have below, because it's not just interesting, but it's just incredible the amount of devastation that has happened. And even it was so bad that some of us may know that earthquakes can cause aftershocks, and unfortunately, the worse the earthquake is, the more aftershocks that there are going to be, and some of those aftershocks can be pretty devastating as well. Heck, in March 12th of 2013, there have been a total recorded number of aftershocks of 9,577, and some of those aftershocks were even on the 7.0, and that's really scary, because a 7.0 earthquake is still a strong earthquake. It's pretty scary. They estimate that the total damages caused from this was about 16 trillion yen, and in American currency that equates to about $163 billion. That's a lot of damage. That's just awful. And it's estimated that it'll take 23 trillion yen to rebuild, which ends up being about 222 billion US dollars. And that something like that can come along and just devastate so much of the area. It takes a lot, not just to rebuild, but to clean up. So the next thing that happened in this event was that the earthquake caused the Fukushima nuclear plant to become destabilized, and that caused another incident. It was categorized as a level 7 incident, major incident, which is the highest that you can possibly get, the most dangerous kind. The only other one that's been categorized like this is Chernobyl, which was also really bad. Thankfully, though, it was only labeled a level 7 because of its cumulative impact. Fukushima had 6 reactors, and this event caused 3 of those reactors to be rated at a level 5, which is an accident with wider consequences, and one of the reactors to be labeled as a level 3, a serious impact. Thankfully, there were no fatalities due to the Fukushima incident, but there were 37 non-fatal injuries, and 2 people were taken to the hospital with possible radiation burns. But that's not the scariest part. The scariest part is the possible cancer rating of this. The maximum cancer mortality is estimated to be between 1,500 people and 1,800 people, and that's a lot. Most estimates, though, are much lower. Most of the estimates, that aren't the maximum. They suggest that it's more realistically somewhere between 130 to 130 to 640 people, which is, it's still a lot, but at least it's not in the thousands, and I know it's still sad. And there were about 300,000 people evacuated from the Fukushima prefecture, and about 1,600 people died just due to the evacuation conditions alone, which include poor housing and closed hospitals. So even though there was nobody that died directly from the incident, there's people that have died or going to die just kind of from the fallout of this. And to give you an idea of how bad the number is of the people who died from the evacuation protocols, it's similar to the number of people who died from the earthquake and tsunami in the same prefecture, and that number is 1,599. And even during the cleanup process of this, there's been a number of people who've died helping clean up, and even more so that have been injured from helping with the cleanup. Even to this day, some of the areas that are hit the worst are still recovering from this incident, from the earthquake and tsunami, which kind of leads us into Godzilla himself. With all these influences, this event is really encapsulated in Godzilla. You can see him, as he rises up out of the water that's, splashing into the different areas and such, and is causing devastating effect, is just like that earthquake and that tsunami. And when he finally comes onto land, he's just pushing his way through, and the cars are spreading and the cars are being slammed here and there, and that some of those cars they're not empty. They have people in them, and people are dying, and the water is just crashing up over the shores, and that there are people there. They're being swept away, and that's indicative of the people who've disappeared as well as the people who died from drowning, and that's incredibly scary. But then Godzilla leaves, and he comes back, and I think this was kind of like the Fukushima meltdown. He came back, and there's another disaster. We've already had two. Why not have a third one? And this is how you can hear him talk about him, how his body is essentially a fission reactor. So he's now the Fukushima reactor melting down, which causes even more consequences. And you can see this in the ferocity of Godzilla himself, of him just wrecking basically everything that he touches. And of course, in the end of the movie, they're able to deal with it. They're able to get Godzilla. They don't necessarily kill him, but they sort of freeze him. And I think this kind of leads to Omri's Law, which is the idea that there are going to be aftershocks, and how many aftershocks, based on how damaging it is. So I don't think they actually destroyed him to, again, continue with this impact of the influences of what had happened. So he kind of stands there as a reminder that he could come back. It's most definitely going to come back and cause even more problems. He stands, frozen in time. So that's why I really liked this movie. It was very interesting to watch, and it was mostly it's mostly a political drama. I don't think Godzilla was in it that much, but you could tell the impact that he was having on the people. It follows mostly the government people, scrambling around trying to figure out how they're going to deal with this incident. And that's the great thing about that Godzilla movies is, they are entertainment, and some of them really are. They're the embodiment of real tragedy. They personify horrific events that have happened to people, and into a monster that essentially maims all that it touches. Then in this movie, the U.S. threatens to drop another nuclear bomb to stop Godzilla because they don't want him coming over to their shores. And that's you can see it in the Japanese eyes when they hear this. The people in the government, they become sad. They become depressed because they know what that's like. I think they're the only country in the world that has ever had a nuclear bomb dropped on them. And they're the only ones that really knows what it's like. I mean, we can see the pictures and we can talk about it and we can have some good idea of what it's like, but we don't actually know because we're not a country. We're not a country that has had a nuclear bomb dropped on them. We're the country that has the nuclear bombs. And I can see that in their cultural context, of how much they wanted to avoid that. And you had the disaster crew just fervently, fighting, trying to find some other solution before the U.S. drops a bomb on them again. Like, we don't want this, we've got to, get our resources together, we've got to do this really fast to prevent, to stop Godzilla so that we don't have this happen again. And that again kind of gets back to the 1954 Godzilla. But even in addition to that, those people that work so hard, the disaster relief people, were also reminiscent of the Fukushima 50 in the actual incident, who they risked their lives and they risked everything to try and stabilize the nuclear plant. And in the end, even though they were able to quell Godzilla's fury, even more lives were lost trying to stop Godzilla. It was really hard for them to do, and they realized that. And the guy that was leading the disaster team, he realizes the decision that he made, and he owns it. He understands that what he did caused even more people to die, and he shoulders that burden. And he said he will not forget the people that he killed. He knows that he was responsible for that. And in some ways that's a critique on how the Japanese government handled some of the disaster. People over there feel like it could have been handled better. And maybe it could have, but it's always lots of really tough decisions, and I'm glad that they showed this guy owning what he did. And I think that's a very sad but important point. It's important to remember the people who have died. Even if the death was in self-defense of any kind, it's important to grieve and mourn and remember those lives lost, no matter who it is. And that's what I love about this Godzilla movie. It has such it definitely does give you this sense of hopelessness, this sense of depression, and how they're trying to fight it. But that's what's great about it, and how they don't let that stop them. They keep going, they keep fighting, and in the end they come up with a solution. And it's a great film, and it's great commentary. If you get a chance, it's out of theaters now, but maybe when it comes out on DVD or something. I believe it's produced by Funimation here in the United States, so maybe pick up a copy or rent it. Like I said, probably one of the better Godzilla movies that I've seen for a while, and it's nice to see Toho Company make another Godzilla movie, considering it's been more than a decade at this point since they have. And I think we are going to see more, because one of the great things that came out of this movie was that they started Godzicon in Japan to help gain ideas for future Godzilla movies and projects. So if they come out with more, I'm going to watch them and hopefully get on here and talk about it as well. So I hope you guys have appreciated this. I hope you enjoy all the information that I've kind of dropped on you. I know it is a lot, and some of it was really heavy and depressing, but I think it's important to note those things, and it's important to understand, why this film was not just entertainment to us, but why it can transcend entertainment, and why it's kind of important to see beyond the film, and how it can help us understand a little bit more about the devastation, the horrible events that have happened to other people. So you guys take care. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this a lot. Catch you next time. Peace out.